The scripture lesson today is from Ecclesiastes chapter 3, and I'm reading the first 15 verses. For everything there is a season, and a time for every matter under heaven, a time to be born, and a time to die, a time to plant, and a time to pluck up what is planted, a time to kill, and a time to heal, a time to break down, and a time to build up, a time to weep, and a time to laugh, a time to mourn, and a time to dance, a time to throw away stones, and a time to gather stones together, a time to embrace, and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to seek, and a time to lose, a time to keep, and a time to throw away, a time to tear, and a time to sow, a time to keep silence, and a time to speak, a time to love, and a time to hate, a time for war, and a time for peace. What gain have the workers from their toils? I have seen the business that God has given to everyone to be busy with. He has made everything suitable for its time. Moreover, he has put a sense of past and future into their minds, yet they cannot find out what God has done from the beginning to the end. I know there is nothing better for them than to be happy and enjoy themselves as long as they live. Moreover, it is God's gift that all should eat and drink and take pleasure in their toil. I know that whatever God does endures forever. Nothing can be added to it, nor anything taken away from it. God has done this so that all should stand in awe before him. That which is already has been, and that which is to be already is. And God seeks out what has gone by. The passage for today may be familiar to you. If you are on the older side, you may remember the song by the Byrds, Turn, 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 to everything there is a season. And so you may have learned this long before you knew it was in Scripture. This morning I decided to be outside, and I decided that there could be a time for all kinds of things. You may hear a time for birds to chirp, or you may hear a lawnmower moving in the background. You may hear children making comments, or you might see a dog walk by. But there's a time for everything. Solomon, who is the author of this passage, had it all. He had wealth, he had power, and he had intellect. And yet nothing was good enough for him. If you read through Ecclesiastes, it's very pessimistic and negative. But in the end, Solomon decides that everything is under God's plan. And so I want you to think about that as we read this passage today. There is a time for everything. But in the end, where our happiness comes from is God. It is God who gave it all to us. There is a time for everything, and we can't control it. All we can do is live day by day and take what we have been given. And so I think about that because God does have a plan. God has a plan, and there is a cycle of life, and we don't know that plan. But we can decide how we're going to live. We can't change the things that are out of our control. But in this passage, there are some things that we can control. We can control when we laugh. We can control when we embrace or when we weep. It even says there's a time for hate, a time maybe when we see injustice or someone being hurt. That is an appropriate time to hate. But God has all things in his control. And so while we would like our lives to be neat and orderly, that isn't possible. As we all know, 3 months ago, our lives were totally different. And now we find ourselves at home. Some of us don't have jobs. Some of us don't go to work for our jobs, but we do it from home. And we had no control over what happened. But God says that God is the one who has the plan. And in Ecclesiastes, in the very end, it says that we have an ability to enjoy our work by our own attitude.